Hey Raghunath, tell everyone about our Patreon community.
Sure, Kaustubha. The Wisdom of the Sages Patreon community is an incredible online yoga resource. If you like the type of yoga wisdom and culture we share on the show, then our Patreon community is a great next step. This is a listener-supported podcast, and any level of sponsorship will unlock a wide range of live and archived classes, talks, and even workshops.
Raghunath teaches, I teach, and we have a host of other excellent teachers on topics ranging from yoga philosophy, asana classes, storytelling, Ayurveda, kirtan, cooking, meditation, and a lot more.
We even have an incredible online Bhakti 12-step recovery group.
So if you want to check it out, go to patreon.com/Wisdom of the Sages.
All right, let's get it on.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Super Soul Farm, this is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast with your host, Raghunath, and co-host and senior educator at the Bhakti Center, Kaustubha Das. Welcome to the show. And guess what it is today? It is Makeover Monday.
Yep.
Makeover Monday is a day where we sort of like reclaim who we want to be this week. A transcendental etch-a-sketch where we look where we went off track last week. Okay, I'm going to refine, retune, recalibrate myself. We set up some weekly goals for ourselves. You know, when I just got back from a family vacation, so it's perfect time for a Makeover Monday. We all posted, all the people on our Discord thread. We post what we're going to do on Monday. There's a little Makeover Monday tab. So if you're part of that Patreon, we call it the Patreon party. It's our whole group of Patreon members who party down with each other. They get on that Discord thread and they write about how they want to recreate this week. Sometimes it's their diet, or sometimes it's their meditation, or sometimes it's their spend more time outdoors. But I find it uplifting to read everybody else's, and sometimes I get some good ideas. How are you, Kaustubha?
Good. You know what I did last night?
What?
I watched Surviving Death. Episode one, yeah.
Episode one was, what was on episode one again?
This woman who had premonitions of her, she had one who had, like, in her pregnancy, she was having all these premonitions, and then another one who she was kayaking down the river or something like that. And
that was crazy, man. She was dead for like 30 minutes. It's all true. All this stuff is true that we're studying. We study the Srimad Bhagavatam, and the Srimad Bhagavatam, I find it to be the thread that ties spiritual truths together. I don't feel like I'm studying even though we're into Krishna Bhakti and stuff like that, it sounds like a very thin thing that we're studying here. But when you study the Srimad Bhagavatam or the teachings of ancient India, it is the thread that ties in all these spiritual truths from all different spiritual traditions, from these metaphysical stories. Then you hear these stories about life after death and reincarnation and mysticism. I find that the Bhagavatam gives me insight to all of these things, and that's why I fell in love with it. And
the biggest impression that I walked away with after watching that was just the feeling that the consciousness, understanding what consciousness is, it's kind of the fundamental realization or fundamental knowledge that we're meant to have in life, and it's there in all the spiritual traditions. But the way that religion has kind of like played out is it kills the conversation. Like, we should, in schools, it shouldn't be an entirely foreign idea to someone that, like, I'm not my body. It should be something that every human being should at least be contemplating that idea, whether or not that's true. You know, and every human being should be exposed to the different ways of thinking and have the opportunity to choose for themselves. But the way that the religious, it's not only religious schools of thought certain religious schools of thought, certain scientific or so-called scientific, or you could say like anti-religious schools of thought. They're all killing the conversation through either their, fear, breeding fear, through ridicule, whatever it may be. People aren't willing to have a serious conversation about like, what is life? Where does consciousness come from? We should be exposed to all the different ideas, and if we can, even if we have like different ideas, but like if we could recognize, hey, there's more to it than just at least it's worth considering, right? That there's more to life than it's just a blend of material elements. Then we're well on our way to learning to cooperate with each other, to seeing the equality that we all have.
I think the times they are changing, Kaustubha.
I
I
hope
think
so.
even within science world or within uh, the secular world, even amidst they try to keep God out of the picture, spirit out of the picture, but it always keeps like resurfacing, and it's going to be probably in a different way than these old school strict religious paths did it. And I think the Vedic paradigm is there's commonality and there's wisdom in all these traditions,
Yeah.
and what ties us all together instead of what breaks us apart, what breaks down the walls instead of building up the walls.
Break down the walls.
Break down the
Uh,
walls. It always goes
you,
back to a Youth of Today song,
it
doesn't it?
does. It does. And but it was interesting that just last week you and I on the show here were talking about the brain, and how the brain is not necessarily the origin of consciousness, but maybe just a receiver of consciousness. And that's right where episode 1 of Surviving Death went right there, where you have these um, doctors of different types and scientists of different types saying that here's a person that was brain dead for a long period of time, but their conscious experience wasn't it was expanded actually in that state. So we need to be
Um,
able to look. We need to be able to hear that and look at it objectively without freaking out and saying, "Oh my God, this is from the devil," or freaking out and saying, "Oh, these people are just a bunch of sentimental idiots that are imagining these things," or something like that. We need to actually be able to look at it objectively, and if we can, then we could discover a lot of things about ourselves and what we share in common. And again, that kind of the kind of knowledge that knowledge begins with understanding I'm not my body, and wisdom begins with like the realization of that, like really getting that and learning to live and see through that knowledge, see the
but what
world
if
through
it
that
is?
knowledge.
What if it is coming from the devil?
Then we're all in trouble.
I think materialism is coming from the devil.
There you go.
Um, I had something very
You had a
intelligent to say a
nugget. You
moment
had
ago.
a nugget.
I had a
Oh,
nugget about humility in Thomas Merton.
oh yes, that's a great way to start the week, I think. But is it
I-
late? Maybe we should save it for tomorrow because we're so late and getting into things today. Should we save that nugget?
What's late? What's late in the world of wisdom? It's like a banana. What is the right side to eat the banana from? The top or the bottom? Humility is the greatest freedom.
Okay.
As long as you have to defend the imaginary self that you think is important, you lose your peace of heart. As soon as you compare that shadow with the shadows of other people, you lose all joy because you have begun to trade in unrealities, and there is no joy in the things that do not exist.
Oh, I mean, we could do the whole day on just that right there.
Yeah, and this is a big part of you call them practices from the East, but it's not really. It's any
Yeah.
spiritual teachings. There is a false self that I'm presenting to the world, and there's an inner self, and the false self exists in a world of comparisons and trying to impress and hopeful and trying to get validation from other people. And anyone who's been down that path knows it breaks us from some authenticity, and that's why in the conversation now is this idea of vulnerability, of being genuine, being sincere. And so there is a spiny, gnarly, prickly shell called the ego, and this Vedic system of the yoga practice is about to peel that shell, crack that nut, and find what's sweet inside us all. And when we can live in that world where we're identifying with myself as that spiritual self and seeing other people as that spiritual self, then what a great world we live in.
It's like even every half sentence in this thing is like full of insight. In humility is the greatest freedom.
Oh, in that quote.
In the quote,
Yeah.
yeah. As long as you have to defend the imaginary self, right? It's not the real self. It's what is my ego? That I am this body, that I'm a man, that I'm an American, that I'm this, I'm that, that. As long as you have to defend that imaginary self that you think is important, it's not at all important, but somehow we become so invested in, you lose your peace of heart. And then the next stage, right? And as soon as you compare that shadow, it's not even real. It's a reflection of who you are. It's not even who you are. But as soon as you compare that shadow with the shadow of other people, the shadows of other people,
Mm.
you lose all joy. Now you're just stuck in you're just struggling, and that's really what we do all day, right? Trying to prop up what the facade, comparing it to other facades, feeling either arrogant or feeling insecure about it, because you have begun to trade in unrealities, and there's no joy in things that do not exist. Right?
Yeah. And our idea of self-worth exists on that plane of presentation. And it's got nothing to do with presentation. Our worth comes from somewhere else. Our worth comes from our birth. We're spiritual beings. We forgot that identity. That's where our initial worth comes from. Anyway, we're hoping to connect all these dots today as we study the sacred literature, hear what the great ancients say. And this is what we do here on the Srimad Bhagavatam every day.
Thomas Merton, it's a great thinker.
Yeah. And the deeper the deeper you dive into these greatest thinkers, these great thinkers of life, the more you start to realize there's so much in common with all these different spiritual paths.
You're such a universalist, Raghunath. Look at you.
I like to call it an ecumenical study of the Srimad Bhagavatam.
Okay.
4 syllables, Mara. 4 syllables.
Okay.
We're going to see how many 4-syllable words I could use today.
All right.
All right, so we're at the Srimad Bhagavatam. Where are we at now?
Bhagavatam. Yeah, there you go.
Bhagavatam, more 4-syllable words. Canto 3. Man, it's been a long time. Because I've been walking around not reading the Bhagavatam. I've been walking around with my iPhone. You've been doing all the reading. So we're on chapter what?
We're in Canto 3, Chapter 5. The
There we
last verse we read was text 38, but maybe we could begin there again today. But first, why don't we have these magical incantations that you like to chant?
Yes. If you're new to this, we chant some incantations before we start to sort of prepare us and to give thanks. Everything in the Vedic system starts with some appreciation, some thanks. So these are the magical incantations today. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narotamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam mudiraye. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances to the personality of Godhead Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and to Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta prayeshva bhadreshu nityam bhagavat sevaya bhagavati utamashloke bhaktir bhavati naishtaki. By regular attendance in classes in the Bhagavatam and by rendering service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed. And loving service to the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Jnana Tamarandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chaksurun Milatam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto my spiritual masters, who have opened my eyes, which were blinded by the darkness of ignorance, with the ointment of knowledge. I finally caught up on my Wisdom of the Sages emails yesterday, Kaustubha.
I noticed you were doing that. Yeah.
There are some great emails coming in. If you want to write to us, we read them all. It just takes us some time because we're a little overwhelmed, but we love it, and I really appreciate everybody writing us in. Or if you have questions for Question Day, you can write us. Our email address is the best way to reach us. Wisdom of the Sages 108@gmail.com. Wisdom of the Sages 108@gmail.com. Keep the questions coming in, and thanks for all the appreciations. And it's accountability to hearing the Bhagavatam every day, it affects us in a very deep way. It's a very, and we do it early in the morning. It's nice to wake up early and do something that connects you with spirit. It sets the mood for the whole day.
All right, well, let's do it.
Okay.
So,
Text 38.
yeah, well, let's just quick recap. What we finished up with last week was the sage Maitreya speaking to the sage Vidura, answering his questions about creation, and he describes how all of the different elements, the fundamental, what's called the Mahabhutas, the fundamental elements, earth, water, fire, air, and ether that the universe is made out of. He describes how each one of those elements is made, and along with them, the corresponding senses, right? So within the elements themselves are the objects of the senses, and the senses are created. So like with ether, there's sound. With air, there's the sense of touch. With fire, there's also the sense of vision. And then with water, you add to that the sense of taste, and all the way with earth, then you also have the sense of smell. So the senses are created, the objects of the senses are created, and the devas are created. The gods that regulate and kind of they have the power of connecting our senses with the sense objects and making it all work, and seeing that we get the regulating what we get experience through our senses. So in the creation of all of that, in a sense, what that is that's the manufacturing of the spacesuits that we're wearing as we move through this world, right? The little god suits that we have that are equipped with the senses, capable of experiencing the objects of the senses in this world. We're moving around in these suits, and those suits have now been created so that we can enter into those suits and have our little adventure in the material world. Now what's
our meat suits.
Our meat suits. Yeah.
It's a suit of meat that we're wearing, isn't it? When you think about it like that, it's like a bunch of meat walking around, trying to move the meat around, trying to decorate the meat, trying to comb the meat hair.
Yeah,
working out. I got to get my meat stronger.
Make it look more attractive.
Yeah, to attract other meat towards my meat.
Okay, this is getting a little weird now.
Yeah, it's getting a little weird. Okay. I didn't mean it like that.
Right. So now what happens?
I didn't mean it like that.
Now what happens is that the devas themselves. Now the devas are like, in a sense, most of them are like us. They're like these jiva souls, right? They're these souls within their own meat suits, but their meat suits are a lot better than ours. You know.
Yeah,
they got their suits are more beautiful, more powerful.
I wonder if they if they have to do anything to get their beautiful bodies. Like these demigods have beautiful bodies, beautiful features, or
yeah, they do. It comes through the piety. It comes through that good karma.
I understand, but do they have to work out? Do they have? I'm you know, or is there just, or do we have just like a twisted concept of what beauty is? Like we think, you know, super fit, super ripped. You know, cultures change over time. Even the idea of what a strong man's body was like. If you look at like a Superman circa 1968, like the original Superman, guy looked like an ordinary Joe with like a stocking leotards on. And then all of a sudden we got this Hulk in the 80s with Lou Ferrigno, and then everybody became sort of a Hulk and a bodybuilder. Maybe they're just very soft and very subtle and very beautiful looking people. They didn't necessarily.
I met Lou Ferrigno once. Tried to sell him a Bhagavad Gita.
You're kidding.
No.
You actually tried to sell Lou Ferrigno a Bhagavad Gita.
Guy's amazing. His legs are so huge. It's like he was wearing jeans, you know, and it's like they're obviously like
bursting out of the jeans.
Well, he wasn't bursting out, but they were obviously like custom made, because they're like I could slide through the whole leg of his jeans easily. Wow, that guy was massive. He wasn't very friendly to me.
He wasn't very friendly. Oh,
no,
that's too bad.
No, I tried. I was persistent actually. He got less friendly as we went. But in any case, we won't go there.
Yeah, I think some people suffer when they're famous.
Yeah,
because people are always trying to. You were probably gentle, but I feel like when people are famous, everybody wants a piece of them, and they probably feel like there's no private life, and you don't know whether to trust people if they're being kind, because some people are very kind, but they actually they want to punk Lou Ferrigno. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of like fear, I think, with fame that comes with fame. There's a lot of insecurity that comes with it. It's another interesting thing from getting your validation outside from people of this world. It seems like it's a great thing, but there's a lot of like, famous people get stalkers. Stalkers are creepy. Famous people get stalkers.
We got to get to the bottom of
Well, this is all important stuff as tying
It
right
is,
in
it
with
is.
the ego.
It is. Okay. But we're speaking of the Devas.
Yes.
And
Devas and their bodies.
And their bodies.
And Lou Ferrigno's body. Good.
Okay.
Let's
so
continue.
We're speaking of the Devas. And so these, in the early level of creation, these are unique kind of empowered beings within the universal, how the universe is playing out. This is described in the creation. So early on, they're kind of given, like, it's almost like in those movies where like someone turns around and gives someone a badge and it's like, okay, you're in charge of this,
Yeah.
you're the
A
lawman
deputy.
now. Yeah, I deputize you or whatever. So in a sense, all these Devas have been deputized by Lord Vishnu, you could say, or by Lord Brahma even, right? Like Lord Brahma kind of creates them, and then now they've all got responsibility, universal important responsibilities. These are pious people, these demigods. Like they want to serve Lord Vishnu well. And so what happens is right here we're going to hear them speak, and it's going to begin with their glorification right from the beginning. This is like early on universal stuff. They get it. They may not be perfect sages themselves, but they're wise and they're pious by nature. And they're going to express the glories of what it means to take shelter of Lord Vishnu, because they're in a big, dark universe that's like problematic, and they know it. And they know that the wise people, they cling tight to Lord Vishnu, and they, and through that, all the misery, they're protected. They pass through all the miseries of this world. So they want to express the glories of that. And then maybe tomorrow or in the next days, they're going to speak about who's disqualified from getting that shelter and who's qualified for getting it. And then they wrap up with some more interesting prayers for enlightenment and direction. We've got this service to do on behalf of you, but we need to be blessed by you in order to do it well. Who are we? And I find all this context interesting because, again, these are these beings that are, whatever we have materially, they've got it way beyond. But we tend to get proud and arrogant. And we see that happen in the Bhagavatam too, right? Like sometimes the Devas get arrogant and then we see them pay for it.
Sure. We get arrogant over nothing.
But we've
got nothing.
We've got no excuse
when we're
for
arrogant.
Yeah.
We've got nothing.
Yeah.
We're
But
so
but
proud.
here we're hearing like them, and they're more, I think those are exceptional kind of historical events that the Bhagavatam's kind of highlighting for us. Like even the greatest materialists, they get arrogant and they become fools. Even the most intelligent being becomes a fool sometimes in the material world. But now we're hearing them speak from their realization. So this is text 38. Why don't you start by reading text 38 and we'll move on from there. Does that sound okay?
Surely. The controlling deities of all the above mentioned physical elements are empowered expansions of Lord Vishnu. They are embodied by eternal time under the external energy, and they are his parts and parcels because they were entrusted with different functions of universal duties and were unable to perform them. They offered fascinating prayers to the Lord as follows. So now all these higher beings. So if you're new to the show, there are beings like humans, and then there's higher beings who have to do with universal affairs, and then there's God, who in the Vedic paradigm is called Lord Vishnu, Lord Krishna, Lord Ram, different names for the same being. And so now they're about to offer prayers, and not only do they look more beautiful, not only are the demigods' meat suits more beautiful, but they're very eloquent and very poetic. And when we hear these prayers, it's very impressive.
Okay.
Continue.
I'm sorry.
Continue, sir.
Please do so. I'll tell you what. Let me just give a preview. This is what they're going to say in the next 5 verses.
Okay.
Okay. They're going to talk about taking shelter of the feet of Lord Vishnu. And when we hear that, like the lotus feet, we can just understand that as a poetic kind of way
Not
of
that they have flower feet.
Yeah, but it's like a poetic device. But by saying by taking shelter of you, just think of it like that. You can think of it as simple as that. But they're gonna say that it's like an umbrella from the miseries of this world when we take shelter of you. They're gonna say when we take shelter of you, we're granted knowledge, full knowledge. They're gonna say when we take shelter of you, all our bad karma is vanquished. All the bad reactions that we're due. They're going to say that when we take shelter, it reveals knowledge and detachment, two of the most fundamental aspects of Vedanta, of Eastern spiritual practice. You get knowledge and detachment. They're also going to say that taking shelter like that rewards one remembrance and courage. Okay, so that's what we'll hear. That's what they're going to, in their own poetic way, they'll say. Ready?
Sure.
Hit it. Text 39.
Text 39. O Lord, your lotus feet are like an umbrella for all surrendered souls, protecting them from all the miseries of material existence. All the sages under the shelter throw off all material miseries. We therefore offer our respectful obeisances unto your lotus feet. O Father, O Lord, O personality of Godhead, the living beings in the material world can never have any happiness because they are overwhelmed by 3 kinds of miseries. Therefore, they take shelter of the shade of your lotus feet, which are full of knowledge, and thus we also take shelter of them. A side note, the 3 miseries, those caused by your own body, that's a miserable. Like you get a stomach ache, or you've got a bee sting, or you've got, actually, that's not a bee sting. What would be
That'd be another
a headache.
entity.
A headache.
Okay.
That's a misery caused by your own body. Another misery is caused by other beings.
That's the bee sting.
That's the bee sting. Someone punches me in the nose, or that's another thing. And the third one is the devas, or the higher beings, or the elements are causing me pain.
Nature.
It's too hot. It's too cold. Yeah. It's too hot and cold. I'm sorry. Am I hot? Ever get that one? I'm like, I'm hot and I'm cold.
I don't know that one.
Okay. So those are the 3-fold miseries of existence. The lotus feet of the Lord are themselves the shelter of all places of pilgrimage. The great clear-minded sages, carried by the wings of the Vedas, the Vedas are the sacred literature, always search after the nest of your lotus-like face. Some of them surrender to your lotus feet at every step by taking shelter of the best of rivers, the Ganga, which can deliver one from all sinful reactions. Anyway, we hear this word lotus a lot, and as Kaustubha is saying, that the lotus is considered the most, I guess, poetically, it's untouched. You can throw water in the lotus, and it has these leaves where it just beads off, and it literally rolls off. So it remains like untouched. So the lotus feet even the feet are very dirty. They walk on the ground. It's considered, especially in Eastern cultures, the lowest part of the body. These feet are like lotuses. So you hear that poetic device again and again in Hindu and Buddhist thought. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just, there's in the commentary, Srila Prabhupada mentions the Lord's transcendental bodily parts are always compared to the lotus flower because in the material world, the lotus flower is the last word in beauty.
I'm thinking like Prabhupada again. I didn't even know he said that. I'm just like, I'm thinking like Prabhupada. That's always a good sign when you make a comment and then you read that comment later, like immediately afterwards. That's a good sign. O Lord, text 43. O Lord, you assume incarnations for the creation, maintenance, and dissolution of the cosmic manifestation. And therefore, we all take shelter of your lotus feet because they always award remembrance and courage to your devotees.
You skip 42.
I skip 42. Simply by hearing about your lotus feet with eagerness and devotion, and by meditating upon them within the heart, one at once becomes enlightened with knowledge. And on the strength of detachment, one becomes pacified. We must therefore take shelter of the sanctuary of your lotus feet.
So when it's talking about taking shelter, just fundamentally, it's saying there's two ways we can approach this world. One is that we say, I'm independent, I'm on my own, and I have this opportunity to try to find enjoyment through the material world in whatever way I may choose. And another way to say is, no, I have a connection to an original source, and I have a purpose that's connected to that source. And I need to find that. And through finding that, I'll find a world of wisdom and insight that will help me overcome all the challenges of this world. And so they're saying that when you choose that way, when you choose to stay connected, when we say taking shelter of the lotus feet, you can think of it just like reconnecting to your source, just being connected. And it's saying when you're connected, again, it's an umbrella from the miseries. That's where it started, right? Saying it's an umbrella from the miseries of this world. It's not saying that the miseries don't come, but it's saying that even though they're coming and you're standing right in the middle, like you're standing in the middle of the rain, but you have an umbrella. It's like you're in the middle of the rainstorm, but you're staying dry somehow. You're not affected in the same way that people that don't have the umbrella are affected by it.
That's a big one.
Yeah.
That's a big one. That's samadhi. That's what we're all shooting for. This evenness between the happiness and distress. Doesn't mean distress won't come. It will come. That's part of, once you get a meat suit, it's coming.
Right.
Expect it. Once you get a meat suit, expect pain from the
miseries
body,
come.
from
Yeah.
other bodies, and from the elements. That's part of having the meat suit. But learning how to connect with spirit in times of great distress or in times of great fortune is actually the purpose of the yoga system. How can I connect in times that usually would throw us off balance? And I think it's safe to say we've all been thrown off, maybe not you, Kaustubha, maybe thrown off balance in times of great distress and thrown off balance in times of great, sometimes great fortune can throw us way off balance.
This all reminds me of one of I got so many favorite sections of the Bhagavad Gita, but like it's towards the end, right? Towards the end of the 18th chapter. 18th chapter is kind of like a summary of so much of the teachings of the Gita. And, it's being reiterated by Krishna to Arjuna again that like, hey.
It's 5 syllables. Reiterated.
It's being reiterated that, hey, don't make this mistake thinking that spiritual life means renouncing the world and giving up your duties in this world. No. That wise people learn how to act in this world as a spiritual path. And when they act in this world, in that consciousness, they're not bound by karma the way materialists are.
You got it up? You want to read it?
I can read it. Well, I was thinking of text 1858, but even like prior to that, like in text 57, as he's wrapped up that whole message and saying, do your duties in this world, embrace them, keep your mind positively engaged that way, but do it with knowledge and detachment, right? And ultimately do it as an offering for me, and then you reconnect and you get that umbrella from all the miseries that we're hearing the Devas speak about.
By the way, for spiritual seekers, this is a big one, because what happens in material life, our work cracks us. Sometimes our relationships break us. Sometimes family can break us. Sometimes wealth or the loss of wealth or the struggle to gain wealth can break us, or even maintaining wealth can break us. So things of this world break us. Sometimes I've had ill relationship with food, an ill relationship with alcohol, an ill relationship with others. And so it seems like the way out is an isolation. But it's the isolation that actually kills us. And we were talking about this the other day. What actually, in Bhakti, it's to break through the isolation, just upgrade your relationship with money, upgrade your relationship with work, upgrade your relationships, period, and still act what you're good at doing in this world. It almost seems unfortunate that why would you be given a gift but you can't use that gift in this world. What kind of weird thing is that? If you have a gift in this world, and everybody here has a gift, why would you get a gift but you don't use that gift and you go into isolation in a cave or live alone and be a hermit? No, in bhakti you take that gift and you give back with that gift, but you do it in a much more refined way where the gift doesn't cripple you. It actually enhances you, enhances your beauty, enhances your speech, enhances your life, enhances your relationship. And that's sort of our work to do, is first of all notice our gift, and second of all figure it out how to give it back in a way that's uplifting and inspirational for ourselves and other people. Don't isolate.
Okay, thank you. And yeah, and the idea is that when we take that gift and when we work in this world, but we don't do it with a selfish motivation, but we do it as a servant and we do it with devotion to God, then that action, it actually is, it's real, it's eternal, it's transcendental, it's spiritual, it's uplifting, it's our and our true nature arises out of that, our eternal happy nature, kind of manifests through that kind of activity. That's reconnection. So as Krishna's wrapping up the whole Bhagavad Gita here, he turns to Arjuna and just kind of like says, he says in this text 1857, he says, in all activities, just depend upon me. So go ahead and do, even you're a warrior and you're having to fight a battle, in all activities, just depend upon me and work always under my protection.
Mm.
In such devotional service, be fully conscious of me. And this is the thing, this is where you go to surviving death and all that. If I can understand that I'm made out of an energy that's eternal, and I have a source that's an eternal energy, and I can move through this world not being bewildered by the moving of the material energy, which is always shifting, but I could always be aware of the spiritual energy that's behind it, that God is always behind it. When I look at the sun, I think of God. When I look at the moon, I think of God. When I drink the water, I think of God. It's that he's saying we can come to that state of awareness. And when you're in that state of awareness, the miseries of this world do not affect you the way that they affect the person that doesn't get it. So he says again, in all activities, just depend upon me and work always under my protection. In such devotional service, be fully conscious of me. And now this is the verse. To me, this verse is just like, this is the ultimate life lesson here, right? It's just, much chita sarvadurgani, mat prasadat tarisyasi. If you become conscious of me, you will pass over all the obstacles of conditioned life. How? By prasadat, by my grace, right? If you become conscious of me, if you move through this world, not bewildered by it, not tempted by it, not disturbed by it, not, we're always complaining or we're always hankering, for something, about something external to us. The wise person gets the deeper, it has the deeper insight into life, right? And so if you become conscious of me, if you move through this world conscious of me, you'll pass over all the obstacles of conditioned life. It doesn't say, again, right, as you were mentioning, it doesn't say that the obstacles aren't going to come, and they're going to come, right? You lose a job, you lose some possession, there's a breakup in a relationship, someone dies, someone, you're injured in some way, someone dear to you is injured in some way. There's so many obstacles that are going to come. It doesn't say they're not going to come. That's the nature of this world.
Injuring your meat suit.
Your meat suit may
My
get
meat
damaged.
suit's injured, man.
Yeah. So that's the thing about meat suits, is like they're made of material energy. They're made of meat.
They're made of meat. Meat breaks.
Meat, it breaks down.
Yeah.
And but it's that if one, and this is something that you see in devotees, right? Like you see in people, the real yogis, that even though the same things in this world are happening to them that are happening to everyone else, they're perceiving it and passing through it in a very different state of consciousness. They don't experience the same type of anxiety that a materialist is bound to feel, because they have a, well, again, what the Devas are saying is they have that umbrella of the shelter of the feet of God.
It's also, Kostu, when you paint the bigger picture of our identity that we've had many lives, This is one life of many lives. We've done many actions that we're not even familiar with. We can't even remember. I've done actions in this life that I don't even remember I did. People remind me all the time, hey, remember when you did this stupid thing? Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. So I'm obtuse. In this life, I'm obtuse. What to speak of previous lives? And when you look at your life as this very, very long, linear existence, then we start to, I feel like it takes away a lot of the mental anxiety, like, oh, this little package of life. No. Life's been going on forever, and it will go on, and we're in a series of lesson learning. I think it takes a lot of the anxiety off when you see your life in a bigger picture. You're part of something bigger. We're here to grow, that there's a benevolent energy bringing us higher through all our tribulations. I think that's a great, even if there's nothing in this world, all the stuff is just made up. It's all fantasy. It's all fiction. It's all myth. Even if there's nothing, what a better way to live in this world. To think like there is a benevolent force lifting us. We're here to grow. Life is eternal. These aren't my children. This isn't my family. Those aren't my parents. We all come together. We're here to love one another for a short period of time. We're here to learn lessons and grow from it. No one's actually your enemy. What a great way to see life. Huh?
I agree. I'm with you there.
Kaustubha?
I'm with you. And Prabhupada is with you because this is his commentary on this verse. You ready?
Hit me.
He says, a person in full Krishna consciousness is not unduly anxious about executing the duties of their existence. In other words, they're not thinking, I need to isolate in order to be pure, right?
Yeah.
He says, the foolish cannot understand.
I just said this, right? Did I just say this?
Don't get proud. Don't get proud, Raghunath. He says, the foolish cannot understand this great freedom from all anxiety. For one who acts in Krishna consciousness, Lord Krishna becomes the most intimate friend. He always looks after his friend's comfort and gives himself to his friend who is so devotedly engaged in working 24 hours a day to please the Lord. And this is interesting. I mean, one can build a little formula of life out of this. But let's continue. But let's get back to it. He says, therefore, no one should be carried away by the false ego of the bodily concept of life. One should not falsely think themselves independent of the laws of material nature or free to act. If we're clear, we're going to see, where's my freedom? I'm growing old every day. I become diseased. My body, my meat suit is wearing away. I don't have the freedom to say meat suit, continue indefinitely. I'm bound. I'm trapped, right? So he says, therefore, no one should be carried away by the false ego of the bodily concept of life. One should not falsely think themselves independent of the laws of material nature or free to act. We are already under strict material laws. Okay? But as soon as one acts in Krishna consciousness, they are liberated, free from the material perplexities. One should note very carefully that one who is not active in Krishna consciousness is losing themselves in the material whirlpool, in the ocean of birth and death. No conditioned soul actually knows what is to be done and what is not to be done.
Say that again. That was a great line.
No conditioned soul actually knows what is to be done and what is not to be done. But
It's such a powerful statement. The conditioned soul, that's us. We have been conditioned and programmed by everything, media, our family, the country we were born in. We're conditioned, and we don't even know what is to be done and what is not to be done. We're just feeling around in the dark in this short life. What do I do? What do I don't do? I don't even know. If I say this, I'm in trouble. If I say that, I'm in trouble. If I work in this world, it appears like it'll be a great success. It seems like my peers, my classmates, my professor tells me this, my parents, this will be giving me great success. And I get that success and I'm sad. What's going on? I don't even know what's to be done and what is not to be done. What a powerful statement.
It's very powerful. These are called meat suit miseries because we identify with the meat suit.
So much. The meat suit miseries. That is wisdom of the sage's mug.
Okay. But it's a meat suit misery because we identify, once you identify with the meat suit, and when that's what it means to be a conditioned soul. I've become conditioned to thinking that I am this body. That's the fundamental misconception. It's the misconception that leads to all the other misconceptions that lead to deeper meat suit miseries, right? You know,
Miseries.
because we wake up in the day and we think that the goal is to become satisfied, but because we identify with the body, we think I need to satisfy the body. That becomes our goal. And that misconception leads to so much further entanglement. So Prabhupada says no conditioned soul actually knows what is to be done and what is not to be done. I'm thinking what is to be done is to satisfy this body. It gets me into competition. It gets me into challenging, everyone else for the limited resources to satisfy my meat suit, and various types of battles, various types of anxiety, and ultimately suffering.
Oh, it's
So
Meat Suit Monday. It's meat.
So he says, no conditioned soul actually knows what is to be done and what is not to be done. But a person who acts in Krishna consciousness is free to act. They can move through this world, right? Because everything is prompted by Krishna from within and confirmed by the spiritual master. And he didn't say without, but I almost feel like from without. So to me, this is like we're getting to the conclusion of the Gita here, and everything's being boiled down to a formula in life. And this is the way that, this is the way that I try to live. And that idea is like, let me make my life an offering to God, right? Some people it's more direct and some people it's more indirect, but even like the business person caught up in the business world can see, okay, like you're saying, we have a gift, right? Maybe my gift is I'm good at making money. Let me not become bewildered by that and get lost in that, thinking that the goal in life is to make as much money as I possibly can to buy things that will make me happy, because no external thing actually brings happiness, right?
Yeah, it oftentimes brings complication.
Always, right? Yeah. Unless we're reconnected. So okay, if this is my gift, let me find a way to use this gift not with me in the center of the equation, that the satisfaction of my meat suit is the goal here.
Right.
But let me see myself not as this meat suit, but as the soul within it, and that I have a connection to divine source that's also made of spiritual energy. And let me use my skill as a service to that divine source and as a service to every living being. Let me see myself as a servant rather than the enjoyer in the picture.
It's not something. It's not a burden. The soul wants to be engaged in some type of work. You know what I mean? And it
Yeah.
wants that work to have substance and significance. Sometimes you meet these people. Ever meet these people like so wealthy? They just know how to tap in.
Yeah.
They just know how to tap into wealth. It's like hanging like a low fruit, and they just know how to pick it. The rest of us are like banging at the glass. How do you get wealth?
Yeah.
How do I get this? And they always have these statements like, well, it's I don't even need the money anymore. I do. It's almost like a game I'm playing.
Yeah.
But even that, it's games get boring after a while. Play Monopoly for 10 hours or it gets boring. Their heart wants significance. Their heart wants to be part of something bigger. Everybody. And so that connection can happen whether you make billions of dollars or whether you just make a few paisa. That's like a paisa is less than a rupee. A few paisa, if you make a few paisa, but you feel like you're part of something bigger. What always touches my heart the most is sometimes you go to a temple in India and there's these people that are very, very wealthy that you see, and they come and they contribute. But there's these people that come that literally are so poor. Yet in their poorness, they carry, like the ladies in their sari or the men in their shirts, they carry rice around in their shirts. And you're like, what the hell are they doing with this rice? But they go up to the altar and they put rice on the altar. Like, I have nothing except rice, but I'm going to donate rice to be offered to God. It's such a beautiful concept. Like, I have nothing to even give. Whereas sometimes, like, Americans will go to these temples and we'll be like, I'm not going to give them anything. I don't know where these guys are from. And in the Westerns, we have so much, but we don't want to give anything. These guys have nothing, and they're carrying around rice in their shirt all day long, so they feel like, I'm coming to someone's home. Let me give some gesture of love. Isn't that beautiful?
It is beautiful, and that's the point. If we're seeing ourselves as a servant, right? Let me take my gifts in life. Let me use them not with a selfish motive, but let me use them as a service. And the more that I'm in that consciousness, and I'm going to reinforce that awareness, that consciousness by regularly hearing from these beautiful yogic texts, which keep me fixed in clear understanding, by regularly meditating on mantra, which is just kind of like washing out that all that misconception from my brain and keeping it focused on spiritual energy, by associating with high quality spiritual people with realization about life, staying engaged in that groove, keeping in that groove, that if we stay there, right, stay in that spiritual groove, that and if it's what to speak of, if it's done with some, if there's just some little bit of budding affection for God that one's feeling in their heart, right? Just like, just a drop of like, oh, I want to please God, then what happens is that these meat suit miseries that everybody's afflicted with, you pass through them realizing I'm protected all the time, right? That this is naturally what happens in the material world, but I have this umbilical cord to spiritual, like to Vaikuntha, which
Like
literally
that?
means no anxiety, right?
Like that, the umbilical cord.
Umbilical
Still
cord.
connected. We are still connected. We just forgot.
Yeah.
This is what we're doing here. And this is why we're encouraging everybody, get some malas, some 108 malas. You don't have them. And just do a practice of sitting down and chanting the Maha Mantra, which is a powerful mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, names of Vishnu. And try to make that the object of your meditation and see if you can do it once a day. See what happens. Make an experiment. If you don't believe it, do an experiment. I'm not trying to coerce you into it. Do an experiment. Life is short. Do a 5-minute experiment or a 10-minute experiment every day for a month and see what happens. Do it like a challenge, a 30-day challenge. Everybody needs a challenge to do things nowadays. Ever notice that?
Yeah, it helps. It helps. You need other people in it with you. And when you have other people with you, you know what you do, Raghu?
What?
Do a little this.
Look at Kaustubha's the new DJ. I like it. Hey, by the way, if you want to do some yoga with me and you want to move your meat suit, you're sick of just sitting around in front of the mirror combing your fur, and you want to move your meat suit, me, Paramananda, Bobby, Marchand, our regular listeners, we're on supersoulyoga.com. I'm teaching today at 7. Thanks, everybody. Meat Suit Monday.
Remember Meat Beat Manifesto?
Meat Beat Manifesto, I remember very well.
Huh? Was that, you remember them well?
I don't remember what they were, but thanks, everybody, for joining us. Hey, I got an announcement. I have got 2 spaces left for my Nepal trip. You want to come trekking through the Himalayas? We have kirtan in the morning, kirtan in the evening, and then we trek. Half the trip is trekking through the Himalayas in Nepal. That's April 8th through 20th. You can check it out at my website, raghunath.yoga. Also, if you have if you took away some little nugget from this class today, what you do is you write it down, you take a picture of it, and you tag Wisdom of the Sages, and you post it. And then we share it again, because sometimes stuff's coming out of the Bhagavatam that's really, it can change your direction, or someone needs to hear it. So do that. Put it out there, and we'll repost it. And it's a nice way to take something you heard and blow it up a little bit, because we all benefit from your realizations as well. Thanks, everybody. This is a community-supported podcast, and for all the Patreon members, tomorrow at 7 p.m. I'm doing a Sweet Baby Krishna class. So for Patreon members,
bring it back.
Yeah. You know what I'm doing Sweet Baby Krishna tomorrow? I'm doing it for me, because I need to hear Krishna Leela on a regular basis, because I'm a selfish little meatball. I'm a meatball.
Meat puppet. We're here on.
I'm a meat.
Bringing up the
Oh
meat
my
puppet.
God! I never thought that the Meat Puppets, which was a band, what a great name for a band. I'm having like a breakthrough today. Meat Puppet. We are a bunch of meat puppets.